You've already seen the headline. A fire breaks out on the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built, and within days, it's out of the fight. A laundry room. That's all it took, at least on the surface. But that explanation falls apart the moment you look closer, because carriers like this are designed to survive missile strikes, absorb battle damage, and continue operating in conditions most machines would never endure. And yet, here we are. One fire, contained, limited in scope, no catastrophic structural damage, and still, the flagship disappears from the battlefield. That doesn't add up. It forces a different question, one that the headlines never ask. Not what happened during the fire, but what had already been happening long before it. Because the truth is, by the time smoke started filling that compartment, something much bigger had already reached its breaking point. And the fire? That wasn't the cause. It was the moment everything finally became visible.
At the same time this story is unfolding, the broader war looks like a complete success. Operation Epic Fury is being described as one of the most decisive naval campaigns in modern history. Dozens of enemy warships erased from the map, missile production facilities reduced to debris, air defense networks that took decades to build wiped out in just days. On paper, it's overwhelming dominance, the kind of operation that should signal total control of the battle space. But beneath that surface, something doesn't line up. Because while the numbers tell a story of victory, the reality on the water tells something else entirely. The most advanced carrier in the fleet, the one meant to anchor this entire operation, is no longer there. It's been pulled back, sitting far from the fight. And that contradiction creates a tension that can't be ignored. How does a force that's winning so decisively suddenly lose its centerpiece? How does a campaign built on precision and control allow its most critical asset to step away at the peak of the operation? That disconnect is where the real story begins.
The strategy behind the operation was built on a simple but powerful idea. Control the choke points. Control everything. 3 critical maritime corridors define the entire region's flow of trade, energy, and military movement. Lock those down, and you don't just pressure an adversary, you contain them completely. The plan called for 3 carriers, each positioned at one of these niqat, forming a triangle of control, a geometry with no gaps, no exits, no room to maneuver. On a whiteboard, it looks flawless, a closed system, perfectly balanced. But the reality was never that clean, because when the operation actually began, that 3rd carrier wasn't there. It hadn't deployed yet, which meant from the very start, the entire structure depended on 2 ships doing the work of 3. The shape of the strategy never changed, but the resources behind it did. And that difference, small at first glance, is what turned a perfect plan into a fragile one. Because when you stretch a system beyond what it was designed to handle, it doesn't fail immediately. It holds until it doesn't.
To understand why things began to unravel, you have to go back to the start of the deployment. This wasn't supposed to be a long, continuous stretch. It was designed as a standard rotation. Deploy, operate, return, maintain. A cycle built around the idea that even the most advanced systems need time to reset. But that reset never came. Instead, the mission kept changing. One theater turned into another. One operational profile shifted into something completely different. The ship moved from region to region, adapting to each new demand without ever stepping out of the cycle. And with each transition, the strain increased, not just on the systems, but on the people running them. Months passed without the kind of deep maintenance checks that are meant to catch problems before they grow, without the downtime that allows crews to recover and systems to stabilize. What you end up with isn't a sudden failure, it's a slow accumulation of stress, layer after layer, day after day, until the margin for error becomes almost non-existent. And at that point, it doesn't take a major incident to cause a disruption. It takes something small.
On paper, the technology behind this carrier represents a massive leap forward. Everything is more efficient, more precise, more capable than what came before. Systems are interconnected, optimized, and designed to push performance to levels older platforms simply couldn't reach. But that advancement comes with a trade-off that isn't always obvious. Simpler systems tend to fail in ways that are easy to understand and isolate. You see the problem, you fix the part, and the system comes back online. But when systems become more complex, more integrated, that clarity disappears. Failures don't stay contained. They ripple outward, affecting multiple components at once. And those interactions can create problems that aren't immediately visible. Everything appears functional until it suddenly isn't. The risk isn't that individual parts are unreliable. In fact, they're often more reliable than ever. The risk is that they depend on each other so tightly that when one element degrades, the entire system begins to weaken in ways that are hard to detect. Over time, that kind of hidden strain builds up, quietly, consistently, until something exposes it. When the fire finally breaks out, it doesn't match the scale of what follows. It's contained, localized, and handled by the crew using procedures they've trained for repeatedly. From a purely technical perspective, it's not the kind of incident that should remove a carrier from operations. But context changes everything. Because this isn't happening to a fresh ship operating within its limits. It's happening to a system that's already been stretched to the edge. The fire doesn't create the problem, it reveals it. It forces a disruption in an environment that can no longer absorb disruption. Crew members are displaced, routines are interrupted, and systems that were already under pressure are pushed further out of balance. At that point, continuing operations isn't just about fixing damage, it's about assessing whether the entire structure can keep functioning safely. And the answer, in this case, is no. Not because of the fire itself, but because of everything that came before it. The incident becomes the tipping point, the moment where continuation is no longer sustainable. As one ship steps out, another steps in, and the contrast couldn't be sharper. This replacement doesn't represent the future. It represents decades of refinement, a design philosophy built on consistency rather than innovation. Its systems are older, its capabilities more limited on paper. It can't match the peak performance of the platform it's replacing. But it brings something else, something that suddenly matters more. Stability, reliability, readiness. While the newer ship was adapting to constant changes, this one was following a predictable cycle. Maintenance completed, crew rested, systems checked and rechecked. It didn't need to push beyond its limits because it hadn't been forced to. And that difference becomes critical. Because in real operations, the most advanced system isn't always the one that succeeds. It's the one that can show up and keep going. The one that doesn't need to prove itself under ideal conditions, because it's already proven it can endure imperfect ones. Even with the replacement in place, the system doesn't fully recover, because the original plan required 3 nikat of control, and there are still only 2 ships available to cover them. That leaves a gap, one that can't simply be ignored. Distance matters, coverage matters, and when a position isn't actively held, it changes the entire dynamic of el-Mandeb. What was once contained becomes accessible again, and that shift doesn't go unnoticed. Activity begins to increase in that uncovered space. Movements that were previously deterred now start to reappear. It's not a coincidence, it's a response. Because in strategic terms, presence isn't just about el-Quwa, it's about influence. When it's there, it shapes behavior. When it's gone, behavior changes. And that's exactly what starts to happen. The system doesn't collapse, but it loses its completeness. It becomes something different than what it was designed to be.
What this situation ultimately reveals isn't a failure of a single ship or a single piece of technology, it's something broader, a mismatch between design assumptions and operational reality.
One approach prioritized pushing the limits of what's possible, maximizing output, increasing efficiency, redefining capability. The other focused on sustaining performance over time, ensuring that systems could handle prolonged demand without breaking down. Both approaches work under the right conditions, but when those conditions change, when timelines extend, missions overlap, and pressure becomes constant, the differences between them become clear. The system built for peak performance begins to struggle under continuous load. The system built for endurance keeps going, not faster, not more impressively, but consistently. And in a prolonged operation, consistency becomes its own form of strength.
By the end of it, the fire that started this entire conversation almost disappears from the equation. It becomes a detail, not a cause. The real story is about limits, where they exist, how they're tested, and what happens when they're crossed. It's about the difference between what a system can do at its best and what it can sustain over time. Because in theory, maximizing capability makes sense. It pushes boundaries, creates advantages, and changes what's possible. But in practice, those advantages only matter if they can be maintained. And that's the question that lingers after everything else settles. Not which system is more advanced, not which one performs better under ideal conditions, but which one can stay in the fight when conditions stop being ideal. Because in the end, the outcome isn't decided by what you can do once, it's decided by what you can keep doing day after day without stopping.